It's finally happening, and whether people are fully ready for it or not, Marvel Studios is about to go through one of the biggest changes in its entire history because in just a few months, Avengers Doomsday is set to hit theaters, and the movie feels like way more than just another MCU release. It genuinely feels like the start of a completely new era for Marvel. And with everything that's been happening lately, from the mixed reactions to the multiverse saga to all the returning characters and huge crossover rumors, there's a bunch of pressure riding on this movie. But at the same time, there's also a lot of excitement because Marvel finally seems ready to bring back that massive event feeling fans have been missing ever since Avengers Endgame. Back in the day, Marvel Studios wasn't even the giant powerhouse people now know. The company officially started operating under the Marvel Films banner in the early 1990s, before eventually becoming Marvel Studios a few years later. At first, the whole focus was mostly about licensing characters out to other companies. That's why characters like Spider-Man and the X-Men ended up at different studios for so many years. But everything changed once Marvel decided to start making their own movies, especially after Kevin Feige stepped in and Iron Man released in 2008. From there, the MCU completely exploded in popularity because audiences had never really seen anything like it before. One movie connected to another, heroes crossed over into each other's stories, and every project slowly built towards something bigger. That's what made the Infinity Saga feel so special. Fans weren't just watching standalone superhero movies anymore, they were following one giant interconnected story for over a decade. And of course, all of that eventually led to Avengers Endgame, which became one of the biggest movies ever made. The film was absolutely massive both critically and financially, earning nearly $2.8 billion worldwide. For a while, it even became the highest-grossing movie in history before Avatar reclaimed the spot after another theatrical re-release. But even though Endgame was this unbelievable achievement for Marvel, it also created a huge problem moving forward because topping something that was successful was always going to be almost impossible. Since Endgame released, the MCU hasn't quite felt the same. There have still been some successful projects and fun moments, but the overall energy around Marvel changed a lot. Before Endgame, it felt like nearly every MCU movie was turning into a billion-dollar phenomenon, or at least making huge profits consistently. But during the multiverse saga, things became way more uneven. Some movies connected with audiences while others struggled to leave the same impact. Part of that happened because the Infinity Saga gave fans a clear direction. Everyone knew the story was building toward Thanos and the ultimate Avengers showdown. But after Tony Stark's death and the original Avengers splitting apart, Marvel had to start over in a lot of ways. Then the pandemic happened, release schedules changed, Disney Plus shows became part of the larger story, and suddenly the MCU became way more complicated to follow for casual viewers. Although Marvel still had some hits, the consistency just wasn't there anymore. Out of all the films released after Endgame, only a couple managed to cross the billion-dollar mark. So naturally, fans started wondering if superhero fatigue was finally becoming real. But now, Avengers Doomsday looks like the movie that could completely shift the conversation again. The biggest reason people are excited is obviously the return of major legacy characters and creators. Robert Downey Jr. returning to the MCU in a brand new role is already enough to get longtime fans emotional because Iron Man basically started this entire franchise. Add Chris Hemsworth's Thor into the mix, plus the possibility of more returning heroes, and suddenly Marvel feels huge again. But what really pushes the hype even further is the return of the Russo brothers. These are the same directors who handled Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Endgame, which are still considered some of the MCU's biggest and most beloved movies. So fans immediately feel more confident knowing the people behind Marvel's most successful crossover stories are steering the ship again. And Avengers Doomsday doesn't just need to succeed financially, it needs to remind audiences why they fell in love with the MCU in the first place. $1 billion sounds massive for almost any movie, but for a project this important, Marvel probably needs even more than that emotionally. They need people talking about the movie for months, the same way they talked about Infinity War and Endgame. They need that event atmosphere back, because the MCU thrives when audiences feel like every major release matters. One thing that could really help Doomsday stand out is the introduction of mutants and the X-Men becoming more central to the future of Marvel. Fans have been waiting years to see these characters properly integrated into the MCU, especially because Fox's X-Men movies had such a huge following for so long. The mutant side of Marvel has some of the most emotional, political, and character-driven stories in comic history, so bringing them into the MCU could open the door to an entirely fresh direction. And it feels like Marvel knows this too, because after the multiverse saga ends, mutants are expected to become the heart of the next major saga. That alone changes everything moving forward. The Avengers carried Marvel for years, but shifting the focus toward mutants could make the MCU feel exciting and unpredictable again. Then there's Avengers Secret Wars waiting right after Doomsday, and that movie could potentially go even bigger. If Doomsday is Marvel trying to rebuild hype, Secret Wars might be the film that fully resets the board. Since the story reportedly involves Battleworld and massive multiversal destruction, the scale could end up surpassing even Endgame. And because Secret Wars is rumored to act as a soft reboot for the MCU, it gives Marvel the chance to simplify things for newer audiences while still keeping the history longtime fans love. That's important, because even though the shared universe concept made Marvel special, the franchise eventually became so huge that some viewers felt overwhelmed. Keeping up with movies and Disney Plus shows across multiple years became difficult for casual audiences, so a soft reset could actually help the MCU feel more accessible again without completely erasing everything that came before. But one of the most interesting parts of Avengers Doomsday right now is definitely Gambit, because Channing Tatum's version of the character suddenly went from cancelled solo movie rumors to becoming one of Marvel's most talked about new heroes. Tatum spent years trying to get a Gambit film made, and it looked like it would never happen. Then, Deadpool and Wolverine brought him in, and fans immediately loved his performance. His version of Gambit ended up becoming one of the breakout highlights of the movie, because he had this funny energy mixed with that over-the-top Cajun personality. People quoted his lines constantly online, and suddenly Marvel realized audiences genuinely wanted more of him. So now seeing Gambit return in Doomsday alongside classic X-Men characters feels like the beginning of something much bigger. But what's really surprising is how different Gambit apparently feels in the new movie. According to reports from CinemaCon, Gambit actually fights Shang-Chi in one of the trailer's biggest moments. And that wraps up today's video. If you want to stay in the loop with all the latest movie and series news, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up, because I'll be bringing you more updates on upcoming movies before they even drop. So keep an eye out for that, along with the latest on your other favorite shows and movies. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.